The Ottoman Empire, once a global superpower spanning 3 continents, faced its ultimate demise in the early 20th century. Centuries of military, economic, and political challenges had already weakened the empire, but a convergence of nationalism, regional revolts, and global conflict brought its collapse into sharp focus. Ethnic uprisings in the Balkans, forced reforms that failed to unify the state, and the disastrous decision to join World War I combined to end the centuries-old empire, leaving behind a transformed map of the Middle East and Southeast Europe. Nationalism emerged as the most potent force against Ottoman cohesion. In the 19th century, inspired by European models and emboldened by declining central authority, subject peoples increasingly demanded autonomy or independence. Greeks, Serbs, Bulgarians, and Romanians had already achieved partial liberation through revolts and wars, demonstrating that Ottoman authority could be successfully challenged. These early movements exposed the fragility of imperial governance, particularly in peripheral provinces where loyalty to Istanbul had long been tenuous. The Balkan territories became the epicenter of unrest. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Ottomans faced a series of conflicts known as the Balkan Wars, which further eroded their territorial holdings. Local populations, often driven by ethnic identity, resisted Ottoman administration, while neighboring states sought to expand at the empire's expense. Military defeats, including the loss of Macedonia, Kosovo, and large parts of Albania, reduced Ottoman control to a fraction of its former territory and undermined morale both at the front and in the capital. Internal reforms, particularly during the Tanzimat and subsequent periods, were designed to strengthen the empire by modernizing administration, codifying laws, and promoting equality among subjects. While these reforms aimed to create a cohesive Ottoman identity, they often provoked resistance. Conservative elements opposed centralization, while nationalist movements viewed reforms as insufficient or insincere. Ethnic and religious divisions persisted, weakening the sense of shared loyalty necessary to sustain an empire under pressure. Economic strains compounded these challenges. The empire had long relied on agricultural revenues, foreign trade, and loans to sustain its administration and military. By the early 20th century, these sources were inadequate. European control over trade and finances, combined with inflation, debt, and declining productivity, limited the state's ability to respond effectively to crises. Economic hardship fueled social unrest and made it difficult to support large-scale military operations against internal and external threats simultaneously. World War I proved to be the final catalyst for collapse. The Ottoman leadership, seeking to restore influence and territory, allied with the Central Powers, including Germany and Austria-Hungary. This decision was both strategic and desperate, aiming to regain lost prestige and secure borders. However, it exposed the empire to global military pressures for which it was ill-prepared. Allied forces, particularly Britain, France, and Russia, targeted Ottoman territories across the Middle East, the Caucasus, and the Dardanelles, further straining already overstretched military resources. The war also intensified internal fractures. Arab populations, encouraged by Allied promises of independence, revolted against Ottoman authority, while Armenian communities faced catastrophic repression in a tragic and controversial episode. The combination of external military defeats and internal unrest left the empire unable to maintain order or project authority. By the war's end, Ottoman territories had been occupied or ceded under armistice agreements, and the state itself teetered on the brink of disintegration. The aftermath of World War I confirmed the empire's collapse. Treaties, including the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920, formalized the loss of vast territories to European powers and newly independent states. The Ottoman Sultanate, stripped of authority and legitimacy, was eventually abolished in 1922. The foundation of the Republic of Turkey in 1923 marked the final transformation from an imperial entity to a nation-state, completing a process that had begun decades earlier with internal revolts and external pressures. The decline of the Ottoman Empire illustrates the interplay of nationalism, military defeat, economic weakness, and global politics. Ethnic and regional identities, long suppressed or managed under imperial rule, surged to the forefront, challenging central authority. Attempts at modernization and reform, while significant, were insufficient to unify diverse populations facing new political realities. Global conflict accelerated the process, turning long-term structural weaknesses into immediate crises. Historians often emphasize that the empire did not collapse suddenly. It had been in a protracted state of decline for over a century. However, the combination of revolts, Balkan Wars, and participation in World War I created irreversible momentum. By the early 1920s, the Ottoman state that had once commanded continents no longer existed, replaced by smaller, ethnically defined political entities and a modern Turkish republic. The empire's final collapse also highlights the role of decision-making in times of crisis. Aligning with Germany and Austria-Hungary was a high-stakes gamble that ultimately failed. While intended to restore prestige and secure borders, it exposed the empire to superior military and logistical power. At the same time, internal divisions prevented a coordinated response to both external invasion and internal revolt. In conclusion, the fall of the Ottoman Empire was the result of a convergence of forces: rising ethnic nationalism, persistent internal unrest, economic vulnerability, and catastrophic involvement in global conflict. Revolts and wars in the Balkans weakened the state territorially and politically, while modernization efforts failed to create a unified identity.